Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the phase transition behavior of cardinality and XOR constraints. I'm Yash Potia. This is joint work with Saurabh Joshi from IIT Hyderabad and Kuldeep S. Meal from the National University of Singapore. This work was presented in HKI 2019. So let's start with the presentation. So what are phase transitions? So a phase transition is a sharp change in the property of a system, the small change in the system parameters. As an example, you can consider water. So let the system be water, let the property be the state of matter. The state of matter could be ice, water, or vapor, and the parameter is temperature. So if you vary the temperature near zero, and if you heat up ice, then all the ice will melt before the temperature goes up to 1. So that's with a small change in temperature, the state of matter changes drastically. In computer science, similar behavior can be observed in um, random 3CNFs. So consider a system of randomly generated 3CNF problems. The property is the probability of a randomly generated formula being satisfiable, and the parameter is the ratio of the number of clauses to the number of variables. So as you change the parameter, the ratio, we find that the probability that a randomly generated formula is satisfiable goes from 1 to 0 at a sharp threshold. So we'll call that threshold the phase transition threshold. So as the study began from random 3CNFs, this is a graph showing the result. So on the y-axis, you can see the probability of a formula being satisfiable. And on the x-axis, you can see the parameter. So as you see, the probability is 1 till you reach close to 4. And it's nearly 0 till you reach near 5. There's a drastic drop from 1 to 0 between 4 and 5. So coming to our problem, this is the problem statement. We are given two integers n and k, and we are given one value between 0 and 1. Problem statement is to predict whether there exists a vector x, which is a 0, 1 vector with n coordinates, which satisfies ax equal to b over jf2, which is mod 2, where A is sampled from all matrices of dimension Sn cross n, and B is sampled uniformly from all 0 and matrices of length Sn, such that the cardinality of X is at most k. That is, the number of ones in the vector X is at most k. So we'll call this problem card XOR, and I'll explain in some time why this name. So the motivation for studying the phase transition of a problem is because in many problems it's empirically observed that the randomly generated problems near the phase transition threshold are hard. Like they are the hardest problems to solve in among all the randomly generated problems, and the difficulty increases as you get closer to the phase transition threshold. And interestingly, this is constant across algorithms. So it's you could say it's independent of the algorithm used. Then the formulas we are interested in, the card XOR formulas, are the satisfiability of these formulas is of importance in three fields of computer science: approximate model counting, approximate inference, and also in coding theory, where it is known by a different name, the card XOR problem. It's called the maximum likelihood decoding problem. So the motivation could be said that wherever you encounter this problem in any of these problem areas, you would know something about the difficulty of solving it if you knew about the phase transition threshold. So our main objective was to gain insight on the runtime behavior of these problems. And our secondary objective was to see if the performance is affected by some things, such as how you give the input or how you tune the solver. And then after that, using this insight, maybe we can improve how the solver solves a problem and give speedups. So now I'll explain the problem of interest with an example. So first consider the XOR problem. And from now on, we'll call S, the parameter which was between 0 and 1, as the density of the XOR clauses. So the XOR problem states that you take a uniformly random matrix A sampled from all 0 1 matrices of dimension Sn cross n for some n, and a random vector B similarly uniformly sampled from all 0 1 vectors of length Sn. And you ask the question, is there a vector X such that Ax equal to B? So this problem is quite simple. This can be solved in n cube time. Consider the example matrices A, B, and this denotes all the satisfying vectors X, which satisfy Ax equal to B. Now we modify this problem and we call it the card XOR problem, which is NP complete. The modification is such. We say that for a random matrix A and a random vector B and an integer K, is there a vector X of cardinality at most K such that Ax equal to B? So now we want the satisfying vector X to also have the property that the cardinality is less than or equal to 1. So as we see in our example, only one vector satisfies this equation and the cardinality constraint. So hence we get the name card XOR, which comes from cardinality and XOR. So now that we have the problem, we have to think about how we can encode it into a format which we can give to some solver. So we will first consider solvers. We'll consider SAT solvers, and hence since SAT solvers can be used to solve NP complete problems, so we'll consider the problem of we'll consider encodings into CNF, which is the standard format, and we'll try to encode the card XOR problem into CNF and XOR constraints. So first consider a set of n Boolean variables, call them x1 to xn. And just as a reminder, the cardinality constraint with parameter k is satisfied when the number of variables set to 1 in assignment is less than or equal to k. So first we'll consider the problem of converting a cardinality constraint into a CNF constraint or CNF clause. So consider this example cardinality constraint, which goes like x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus x4 is less than or equal to 3. So we want to convert this into CNF. So there are many different encodings possible. This is a heavily researched topic, and the encodings, people use different encodings for different purposes. To show the benefits and the cons of using some encoding, we'll discuss something known as the arc consistency. So we call a encoding arc consistent if as soon as k input variables are fixed to 1, unit propagation can fix all other input variables to 0. And this is a very useful property to have for encodings given to SAT solvers, because unit propagation is much faster than search. So if something is not arc consistent, then a SAT solver would have to search and then figure out that whether a partial assignment it satisfies or not. So our consistency is a nice property to have in an encoding. So let's see, we have 3 encodings which we try out in our experiments. One is the adder encoding. So it has a benefit of being compact. So it has order n clauses, where n is also the number of variables, but it is not arc consistent. So there's a trade-off there. Another encoding we try is the BDD encoding, which has nk clauses, where k is the parameter given to the cardinality constraint, and this is arc consistent. And we have one more, the cardinality network encoding, which has n log square k clauses, where again k is the parameter given to the cardinality constraint, and this is also arc consistent. So cardinality network is the most compact encoding, which is arc consistent. So we experiment with all 3 of these encodings. So this is how we can encode cardinality constraints into CNF. The other thing was the matrix equation AX equal to B. We want to we convert them into XOR equations, which can be given as input to the SAT solver we deal with. So the way to convert the matrix equation into a set of XOR constraints is as follows. So you have variables x1, x2, x3, x4, and a matrix of ones and zeros. So first you take a row and you choose all the variables corresponding to the positions which are 1 in the row. For example, the first row here is 1, 0, 1, 0, which corresponds to x1 and x3, but not x2 and no x4. And this corresponds to the first constraint. Similarly, the second constraint has x2 and x3. The RHS is just the value in B, the corresponding value in B. So now we have converted the cardinality constraint and the matrix in the input to CNF and XOR. And this is a solver friendly format. So this we can give directly to the solver. And this always leads to a polynomial size encoding of the problem, a polynomial in n and k. So the card XOR constraint, the instances now, as we saw, as was given earlier, Sn random XOR constraints and an integer k. And the question we ask is about this existence of some vector x of cardinality less than k, so that it satisfies the XORs. If you notice, there are only 2 parameters which can completely characterize the problem, that are S and K. We consider the asymptotic case where n goes to infinity for a theoretical analysis. So since we sample randomly generated problems, we cannot make a statement that all problems are satisfiable or all problems are unsatisfiable with any given set of parameters. Hence, we talk about the probability of satisfiability of a randomly generated problem. So what does that mean? It means that if you generate many problems, you could say that maybe 90% of them you would expect 90% of them to be satisfiable and 10% to be unsatisfiable. So you can make statements like that. So the way we did that was we examined the problem and we separated the cardinality and XOR constraints. So for any given cardinality constraint, we know the exact number of solutions it has, and it can be expressed as this formula, which is summation of NCI from I equal to 0 to I equal to k. Now the XOR constraints, we cannot, we do not deterministically know how many satisfying assignments it will have, but we know that with high probability of all the assignments which satisfy the cardinality constraint, 2 to the power minus Sn would satisfy the XOR, the random XOR. So it depends on S. So now we consider the values of S and K, where this product goes to 0 from 1. So when it is 1, that means it's satisfiable. And when it goes to 0, it means it's unsatisfiable. So the boundary between where the boundary between 1 and 0, where this function goes to 1 and goes to 0, is the phase transition boundary. So the probability of satisfiability will go from 1 to 0 at all the Sk, where this function changes value from 1 to 0. So now that we have a theoretical bound, we want to experimentally verify it. To do that, we generate, we take n100. So first we take 100 Boolean variables, and for all S and K, we generate 10 instances. So since S can go between 0 and 1, Sn can go between 0 and 100, and 0 and 100, and K can be between 0 and 100 also. So we have roughly 10,100 problem instances, and we generate 10 copies of each. So we have about 100,000 CNFs, and then we plot the satisfiability of all of these. So this is the result. So on the y-axis, we have plotted S, and which is the density of the XOR clauses. On the x-axis, we have plotted K by N, not K, because we want to normalize it between 0 and 1. Inside the graph, you can see there are some colored pixels. So the darker the color, the higher is the probability that a problem with that S coordinate and K coordinate is satisfied. So most of these dots under the red line are dark blue, which means that of all the 10 copies we have generated, all of them were satisfiable. But on the other hand, outside the red line, we see that we see white or light blue, which means problems were unsat. The red line is of course the theoretical transition which we predict. So we have only plotted this function, which means we have plotted, this is actually two lines. It is the function equal to 1 and equal to 0. But of course they look like a single line because it's very close. It's a very sharp boundary. So what you can tell from this graph is that there's a very sharp boundary between satisfiable and unsatisfiable problems for at least n equal to 100. And our prediction matches the actual result quite closely. So we also conducted a lot of other experiments. So we'll now talk about the insights from those experiments. The solver we have used was CryptoMinisArt, as it is optimized for these kinds of formulas, CNF XOR formulas, where tightly integrated Gauss-Jordan elimination and SAT solving. To the best of our knowledge, there are no other specialized solvers that can handle CNF XOR formulas efficiently. So we have only experimented with CryptoMinisArt. So for our first set of experiments dealt with the problem encodings, where we encode cardinality constraints into CNF. And usually when you choose an encoding, it often has a big impact on the runtime performance. So do we get any speedups with different encodings in our case? The answer is no. Our experiments indicated that the solver is largely indifferent to the encoding used. So to illustrate that point, I have plotted three graphs. This is a runtime graph as opposed to the previous graph which showed the satisfiability. The way to read this graph is you can look at the purple region, this comma shaped region. That's where that indicates all the values of S and K for which the solver times out, or for which were intractable for the solver. So the three encodings we discussed. So the first one is adder, which is top left. The second one is BDD, which is below that, and cardinality networks, which is bottom right. So we see that for all three encodings, the purple region is quite similar. It's mostly the same. And more importantly, the region under the red line, which was all the problems which were satisfiable, that region is nearly identical for all three encodings. So usually we are interested in that region where it's satisfiable. So hence from this we can conclude that the encoding does not matter much. The other things we experimented with was the face selection, was the solver. So in the solver, you can change a few configurations. One of the configuration you can change is what face selection heuristic the solver uses. So what are face selection heuristics? Face selection heuristics basically decide for the solver that after it selects a variable to branch on, which branch should explore first. So a very simple heuristic would be to always explore the same branch first, like always explore the false branch or the true branch first, and then go on to the other branch. However, some more complex heuristics, such as the face saving heuristic, is very successful, and it is used by almost all modern solvers. So varying these heuristics, does that give us any speed ups? So the answer is yes. However, it's the simpler heuristic which performs better. Like the simplest heuristic is always explore the false branch first. That works actually much better than the others. So to see that, I have plotted a couple of runtime graphs. Again, you can visually see that the purple region is quite different, which means the problems which were left unsolved by the solver is much more in the case of face saving, when it was using the face saving heuristic, as compared to the case where it was using the always false heuristic. Hence, you are able to solve far more problems using the always false heuristic, which is on the right. And more importantly, we were able to solve comparatively more problems in the satisfiable region. As you can see, that there's no change in scale. You can use the black line as visual reference. And yeah. So to conclude, we have identified and validated the phase transition threshold for the card XOR problem. The card XOR problem occurs very frequently in different parts of computer science. Our extensive experiments reveal the existence of a hardness region, which has not yet been formally studied. So we uh, we do not know why it looks like that or why it should be that. So, but only empirically we were able to figure out that this region is hard, like randomly generated problems might be hard. We can predict that from before. The empirical study also tells us some practically usable information about the solver heuristics and problem encodings. Of course, one such insight is that the optimal phase selection heuristic is always false among the ones which already exist. So that could immediately help someone who encounters this problem. So now we can talk about future work. So we have played with we have played with cardinality constraints, which is quite restrictive. So it involved constraints which are like x1 plus x2 plus x3 is less than equal to some number. But a natural way to extend this is to allow coefficients. So these constraints are known as linear pseudo-Boolean constraints. And here is an example where we say 3x1 minus 10x2 plus 2 not x3 plus x4 is less than equal to 5. You can convert not x3 to x3 by replacing not x3 with 1 minus x3, and it's the same. And you deal with the constants. So this is a generalization of the cardinality constraint. So this has also not been studied yet. Another direction would be to extend our study to non-uniformly sampled matrices. So if you remember, we have sampled the matrix A and vector B uniformly from all 0 1 matrices. However, in practice, sparse matrices are also used because they have some beneficial properties uh, where, where the card XOR problem appears. So instead of sampling A from all 0 1 matrices of Sn cross n, maybe you could sample from structured matrix families, for example, all LDPC codes with parameters Sn and n, or some sparse codes where which is also like which are also randomly generated over all 0 1 matrices, but the expected density of ones in the matrix is different and it's given by some parameter p. So these are the two directions in which we can explore further. Okay, thank you for your attention.